correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Welcome back to Me and Steve, and this week we've got a really special episode planned. But before we get into what all that's about, let me take a quick minute to tell you about another podcast on the D20 Radio Network that you might want to check out. And this week, I'm going to talk about the Miskatonic University podcast, which is a podcast all about Call of Cthulhu and Alien and all kinds of other weird and or horrific role-playing games. And it's actually a really cool show. I get a lot of really neat ideas from them. You can find them at www.mu-podcast.com. And Keeper Murph, Keeper Dave, and Keeper Bridget are really nice people. They have a really lively Discord. So, like I said, go listen to them for some ideas. And that also kind of ties into our topic for this week's show, which is a game that, as I'm recording, the Kickstarter actually just wrapped up about an hour ago. That is a game called Cursed Captains of Cthulhu. And joining me to talk about it and ways you can still maybe get in on the Kickstarter is Susanah Grace, who is a streamer, happens also to be a staff member at Black Cats Gaming, who is producing that game and is also the art director on the project. So welcome to Me and Steve, Susanah Grace. And did I forget to mention anything else that you happen to do at the moment?
Well, hello, first of all. Thanks for having me. No, I think you got it. I stream. I am the media and marketing coordinator for Black Cats Gaming. I'm art directing Cursed Captains of Cthulhu. And I'm also illustrating a bunch of Cursed Captains of Cthulhu, too, because I'm also a freelance illustrator. So, many hats. Many hats.
Well, you know what? That's I think the way a lot of people in this business are. You start as a fan and then you do more and more things, and all of a sudden you're doing many things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like me personally, I only started playing role-playing games like 6 years ago, I think. When I was at university, one of my housemates cracked out 4th edition D&D and was like, hey, you want to give this a go? And then, fast forward a bit and I'm making games now, which is buck wild.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like I've been playing on and off since I was at university, but that was 7 years ago. I don't know. I'm getting too old to remember these things. But in any case, you just literally, like I said, as we're recording this, about an hour ago, wrapped up a successful Kickstarter campaign for this game, and we really wanted to get someone from Black Cats on while the campaign was active, but unfortunately, scheduling just didn't happen, and all those other fun things. But you did tell me you guys were going to do late pledges and so forth.
Yeah, so we're looking into late pledges in August, probably around late August, for anyone that missed out on the campaign. Because we did that with the Spy game, which is our other game, and there were a lot of folks that missed the campaign when it was live. So we want to give a chance to get on board with it.
Yeah, and having been a backer of the Spy game when you all did that, I got the physical products are just, the quality level is amazing. The book. And do you by chance know who happened to make the dice for that? Just random off the top of my head question.
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid. That was James's purview. I sent him off to just do that. I'm like, James saw the dice.
Because they're really, really nice. I like them a lot.
Yeah, I think we're going for the same manufacturer for the Cursed Captains dice.
Oh, very cool.
So should be pretty sweet.
So let's, I guess, dive right into it with Cursed Captains of Cthulhu, which, I mean, I think it is kind of what you'd expect from what it says on the box, but tell us a little more about it, because it's a concept I'm surprised I haven't seen before.
Yeah, so we are, as you could probably tell if you ever hang around the Black Cats gaming channel, we're big fans of the pirate sort of genre, because we play Sea of Thieves all the time. And James, in fact, knows tons about pirates. This was like his little passion project.
Mm-hmm.
So, Cursed Captains was actually in the works before I joined Black Cats because I joined the company towards the end of the Spy game before that released. And I was instantly sold because to me, pirates are cool. Pirates are rad. Everybody loves pirates. And then you add Cthulhu on top of it, which makes sense. You know, he sleeps beneath the waves. There's Dagon. There's all the other sort of nautical sort of creatures. It just makes
Mhm.
perfect sense to smush the two together. Like, you know, who doesn't want to be swinging off a rope with a blade between your teeth as you're about to go kick Cthulhu in the tentacles? You know, it's just the coolest thing I could imagine doing at the table.
Oh, it really is, and, like I said, given all the other I mean, Call of Cthulhu was one of the first games I ever actually got
Hmm.
into a campaign of, and so I think that genre, whatever, has a kind of a just a special place for me, and
Hmm.
I love playing that type of game to this day, but it does, and it I don't know, like, I heard the title and I'm like, "Okay," and then I saw original system, and then I looked into it a little more and I'm like, "Oh, this is really cool." So,
Yeah, I mean, one of the really cool things about it is we knew we wanted to design our own system for it because while Call of Cthulhu is fantastic, and I've been in a couple of Call of Cthulhu campaigns that I had an absolute blast with, for the tone we wanted to set for the game, so we're like, we are historically adjacent and it's more pulpy and swashbuckly in nature. We didn't really feel like a game like Call of Cthulhu would suit that tone, you know? Like Call of Cthulhu really suits that more creeping dread. You know, your investigators are pretty fragile and you're going to creep around and investigate stuff. And we wanted a system that was more like, nah, I load up a cannon, I fire cannonballs at this big monster, you know, I buckle my swashes, that kind of thing. So that's why we went for our own system with it, just because we really wanted to really get that more pulpy, actiony, funny sort of element to it.
yeah, and having watched the couple of actual plays that you put out during the Kickstarter campaign,
Mhm.
I think you hit that mark with it because the one thing I will say, and this is always a thing that I look at with a new system and is how does it work at the table? Like you can design all kinds of systems and they look great on paper, and then you go to play them at the table and they're clunky or they're confusing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and both reading it and then listening to it in practice, this is a very simple, easy to understand, but still very functional system. And I think that's really, really cool. Do you want to fill in anything on that? I know James, I think, did most of the actual system design, but obviously, as you being the first one to run it in public, you I would assume have at least a quite good handle on it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the well, straight off the bat, and I'm not sure if it's immediately conveyed, is we definitely went for the D6 system because to again help with the theming, we wanted it to feel like you were playing Liar's Dice at the table, right? The pirate game. You know, that's why we have a bunch of of D6 in your hand to throw out. So, you know, that's just a little theme in there, a little sneaky peek into the design ethos there. But we are of the belief as well that an easy system or a simple system is not a bad word, right? Because sometimes there can be that level of, I don't want to say elitism because that sounds too snooty, but like some people really look down on simple systems, you know? They're like, oh, well, I can't measure this thing in exact millimeters. It's, phew. But having been, you know, Sam and James have been making RPGs forever, and I've come maybe at a time where I've not been exposed to the old like culture of tabletop. I'm kind of one of the new kids on the block. I and the team really wanted to make a simple, easy to play, easy to learn, narrative focused system because we're all a bunch of theater kids at Black Cats. We're very dramatic. And if you ever swap by our Twitch channel when we're playing Game of Thrones, you'll see just how dramatic we can get. But we really wanted to facilitate stories at the table and make it so you can share these stories with anyone. Like my mum watches my shows, and oh, I know.
No, 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 no. I told you, right before we started
Uh-huh.
recording that I actually watched the YouTube
Yeah.
version of those 2 streams, and at one
Yep.
point, I remember hearing you say that your mom actually backed the Kickstarter,
Yes.
and the idea of my mother the only thing my mother knows about role-playing games is anything she happens to remember from the Satanic Panic era, and so that was just, like, one of those, "Oh, wow, that's neat." and so foreign moments.
Well, I think in one part I'm kind of lucky because I come from England, as you can probably tell by the accent. But the Satanic Panic never really took hold in England as much as it did in the US.
Mhm.
So my mum never really had that preconceived notion about role-playing games. But yeah, she's watched my RPG streams for years and years, even the really bad ones. Those who know my RPG history, I've been in some dicey campaigns, and she's watched them all. But she has always been intimidated by systems. Like I could tell she wants to play, and every time I sit her down, I'm like, "Do you want to play?" She kind of balks at it. But with a system like Call of Cthulhu, she was really interested, and she was, eager to see how it's played and maybe have a go herself. So we wanted to make it so it was accessible for people who are new or maybe intimidated by RPGs, but also, we do have a lot of customization in it, and you can really get down to the nitty-gritty of it too, if you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say what I'm seeing in the quick start, and I unfortunately haven't gotten to read the second half of it too well because I didn't realize there were 2 parts until about Tuesday,
Mhm.
and I put in, I don't know, I think the shortest day I worked this week was 9 hours, and I have a 40-minute commute, so
Dang.
yeah, um, so that doesn't leave a whole lot of time to read games,
Mhm.
when I have other things to do as well, but I did manage to read the main rules section of the quick start, and it does feel very like, it feels like you guys have really hit that sweet spot between a system that has enough meat that it doesn't feel very vague, but also isn't, a very extremely long skill list. "Oh my god, my character sheet looks like a spreadsheet,"
Yeah.
with all kinds of tiny little cells on it.
Yeah, for sure. Because, we, as I said, we do like our crunchy systems from time to time, but we really didn't want to make a crunchy system. But we also didn't want to make it so simple that, you would play it once and then be done with it. We really wanted to facilitate that campaign play and also that sense of progression. So one really cool thing we do with like leveling up, for example, is if your pirate wants to learn a new skill, so say for example they're not a great swimmer, before you can take a point into it, at some point during play, your pirate, your character, you have to show some interest in learning how to swim. So you can try it, and it doesn't matter if you fail and almost drown and have to get pulled out by your crewmates, or they strap ye olde floaties on your arm and send you out for a little paddle to see how you do. But you've got to have tried it before you can do it. Because one thing that annoyed us previously from playing other games is like suddenly you level up and oh now my character can like do somersaults and gun kata out of nowhere.
No, that's actually really cool. Yeah, that I like that, that you, so to speak, have to have narrative justification for your improvements. That's something I'd quite happily deal with, and quite frankly, sometimes I struggle in games because I'm like, where do I put my experience? Because I don't feel like I've earned anything.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get you. I get you. And that's something I myself have come across with role playing games is I always try and narratively explain why my character is suddenly better at something.
Mhm. So, for those who haven't read the quick starter or, watched any of the streams, the
Mhm.
system is a 46 base, then you add your, call it, attribute value, and then maybe, what are they called again? I've forgotten the traits?
Yes, so we have characteristics, which are your sort of your base stats. So if this was like Dungeons and Dragons, it would be your agility, your strength, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
They are called. If you just bear with me as I pull them up, because my brain is full of a lot of things right now.
Oh, I'm quite sure, yeah. Let's see, I've got the quick start up, but I'm in
Here
a
we go.
different
I got
section
it.
of it.
It's loading up. Here we go. Bear with me. Yep. Come on, PC, when you're ready. There we go. So you have your melee, which is pretty self-explanatory. If you want to be the cool sword user, or you punch in stuff, you want to punch Cthulhu in the tentacles, then you'd use your melee score. Then you have your brawn, which is stuff for like heaving around cannons, surviving, being poisoned, or climbing things, stuff that's going to use your strength.
Mhm.
Seafaring is your knowledge of the sea and general sailing skills, keeping watch, knowing the difference between dolphins or a monster called ship eaters, which James loves because they're really gross. And he just loves them. They're his favorite monster, I think. Then you have Abjure, which is using the Eldritch magics but using them in a more protective and healing way than an aggressive way. So,
Hmm.
you would be like drawing protective circles, creating wards and barriers, that kind of thing, using eldritch magic. Harness is the opposite of that. That's using eldritch magic for aggressive and attacking purposes. So one of the really cool spells that I love is you summon a huge inky black tentacle to crush a ship. That would use harness to cast that. You have your studies, so that is how smart your character is. How learned they are. If they are maybe a doctor, they would use their studies to assess a fellow crewmate or things like that. Reading documents in different languages, that kind of stuff. And then you have your savvy, which is more your street smarts. It's your haggling with barters. It's like, fitting in, blending in with crowds, that kind of thing. General sort of roguery is savvy. And then finally, you have your accuracy. So that is basically what it says on the tin, how accurate you are. So if you want to pull off a shot with your pistol or your musketoon, you would use your accuracy. Or if you want to pick a pocket or something like that, if you're trying to be very precise with your movements, you would use your accuracy. So there's your characteristics.
Yeah, yeah. And then now those are a range of what, roughly 1 to 5, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, they're 1 to 5. And the one thing that I really do like about our character sheet is that they are arranged as if they're around a ship's wheel. And on the character sheet, we have it form filled at the minute, but if you print it off, you can color in each little block to show, to get a very quick reference of where you are with each skill.
I'm literally looking at the image while we speak, and that never occurred to me that that's exactly how it's set up.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, because we wanted this game to be like if you were at a convention and someone handed you that character sheet, you'd be able to look at it and grok what it is very quickly, instead of, as you said previously, squinting through a million tiny boxes and looking at 20 numbers and going, what?
Yeah, yeah. And so then to roll a check or a test, you take, we'll say you want to smash a tomato at someone's face while you're having a fight on a ship. So you would roll melee plus, well, you would take your melee characteristic.
Hmm. Yep.
Then I don't know if you have a vegetable smashing trait or something like that.
Well,
Um,
we have different. So we have professions, and so those are kind of like your character classes, as it were.
uh-huh.
But they don't necessarily dictate a set path for your character. Like if you're playing like a paladin in D&D, you've got like a career path to go on with things that you have to take as you go down the line. A profession is just like a way to start out your character and give them a little flavor at the start and little starting skills at the start, but you can then branch off from anywhere that you want after that, depending on where your character goes, what happens to them at sea.
Hmm.
So each starting profession starts with a specific skill. So, for example, with the Seeker, who is like they use harness. They are a aggressive eldritch magic user. They use that on the attack. You can have such skills as like knowledge of dark tomes, which gives you a +2 modifier to all spell rolls that use studies or harness, and that kind of thing. And those will inform your rolls. So, for example, with your tomato in the middle of a gunfight, in the middle of a boarding, perhaps, your GM would ask you to roll a melee to attack. So you would roll 4d6, and you add that to your melee characteristic bonus, whatever it is. And then if you have any applicable skills, say, for example, there is I forgot what that festival is in Spain where they throw tomatoes, but say,
No.
for example, you have a Spanish sailor who's from that area where they throw tomatoes and you get a +1 to tomato throwing. You would add that to that. So it's literally 4d6 plus your brawn, plus your melee, sorry, plus any applicable skills. And that's it. You have to then beat a target number, which is set by your GM. And if you beat the number, you do the thing.
Yeah, yeah. It seems delightfully flexible and yet simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like I said, I know I like systems that do that, and it also seems very like it also is one of those where it isn't completely abstractly narrative,
Hmm.
but it leaves a lot of room for the narrative.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's again, it's a thing that I really like in games. Like I've been playing some of the generic version of the FFG Star Wars, which is
Mm.
very very narrative driven. And there are times where as much as I love the system, there are times where I also want actual numbers too.
Yep.
And this kind of feels like, again, it's not purely narrative, but it is largely narrative, but you still have some numbers, which playing a game that is purely narrative or extremely narrative can actually be intimidating for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even myself, like I am a very role play heavy player and GM, but even then, I still like having those numbers there to help inform my character's choices. Or, it's very easy to, I think, if you're in a pure narrative system, to just be like, yeah, my character succeeds all the time because there's no numbers telling me that they fail.
Mhm.
And I think failure is actually extremely important in RPGs, and that's a TED Talk for another day.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's really intimidating sometimes when where there's a very rules light.
Yeah, and so like I said, I think this straddles that line very well. And the other thing that I like is that I know it's mentioned in the quick start, and advancement isn't really covered there, but it's the quick start. One wouldn't necessarily expect that, but it has been stated that your total modifiers to add to your dice roll is hard capped at 10.
Yes.
So at the very least, you're adding 4 dice
Hmm.
and a 10, or at
Yeah.
the very most, not the very least.
Yeah. I mean, that's as well partly some balancing there because it's very easy to have intense power creep, you know,
Mhm.
when your characters are just unstoppable. They don't fail at anything. So that's there just to, I think, help with that. Plus, it's a little guiding hand from the system to help make more rounded characters. Because you could like glass cannon, just
Mhm.
max out just one thing. But with the way our system designed in the situations that you would hopefully find yourself in as a player, you're going to get into trouble if you just max out one stat. That's going to suck at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that speaks to the nature of, at least, I've been on a boat a few times. I've never been a sailor, but
Hmm.
I would imagine that in real life, for whatever that's worth, you do need to have more than one talent.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta, especially being like on a pirate ship at the time, if something happened to a crewmate, someone has to be able to take their spot to make sure that that job gets done. You gotta
Mhm.
be a dab hand at a couple of things rather than just an expert at once. Because if you go down, well, no one else can do your job, or if someone else goes down, you can't do theirs. So we try to. There's many things like that in the design where we try to evoke that sense of being a part of a crew and being a part of something bigger than just your character.
Yeah, and I think, that comes across, even if I wasn't picking up on the specifics behind it, it does
Mhm.
reinforce those themes. And oh, that's okay. My brain, I had thought of something, but I didn't want to interrupt. It isn't touched on in the quick start, obviously, but you have mentioned advancement. Is that going to be level based, or like an XP spend, or is that still not entirely determined, or can you not say?
It's not completely hammered out just yet. So for folks that don't know, Cursed Captains is still in development. We are still writing it. We have the bones down, but there's some specifics and some tweaks that we need to make. We found that in playing the stream. For example, Millie is playing an assassin. Well, she's playing a marksman, I think, and she has this trait, assassin shot. And it is so powerful that we had to nerf it. Because she was just one-shotting each encounter.
Not to
Go ahead.
sidetrack too much, but I was watching those today, and every time that started to come up, I could only think of, I don't know, did you watch, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series a few years back?
I did, yeah, yeah.
Ming-Na Wen's character.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, basically,
And
wherever Millie went, dudes just fell down.
yes, it was that one line at some point that Coulson said something about, yeah, she's who backup calls in,
Yeah.
or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but
Yeah, her character is the nuclear option. When someone
yes.
has to die, you send her and the job is done. But going back to advancement is going to be level based, but there will be XP too, as it
Okay.
is at the moment.
Mhm.
Adjustments may come. This is all with a heavy caveat of adjustments may happen.
Oh, very clearly. I mean, that's the nature of, that's why I think you see so many companies, they come out with a game built off someone else's engine, because
Hmm.
that's where I don't want to say the real, well, it's the heavy lifting. I won't say the hard work, because designing settings and that is all very hard work, but there's a lot of mathematics involved with system design that get
Yeah.
entirely too fiddly.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and there's a whole set of mathematics behind why we chose 4d6 too, to do with the bell curve of the rolls and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, when numbers start getting talked about and statistics and stuff, my brain just it's white noise like from a TV.
I know, no, that I completely understand that. I get into that a little bit, but at some
Mhm.
level, like, it's also like, you know what? My brain is going 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm enjoying this, but everyone else is looking at me with these glassy looks like, "What are you talking about?"
I mean, I can certainly appreciate it, but mathematics has never been my particular strong suit. So
Oh, hey. But yeah, no, the system seems really, really cool and both lightweight and very functional. I like that.
Mhm.
Now the traits and skills, are those going to be ranked eventually, probably? Like, to where again, the quick start doesn't cover that,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't expect it to, even if it was a game that you just released a
Yeah.
quick starter that was finished.
So the way skills would are going to play out, you can take on new skills as you advance, but it will be a prerequisite. So you may need like a harness of 2 or a seafaring of 1 to take certain skills. We try to make it that you can't glass cannon, as it were. You can't just stack 5 harness and just only get 5 harness skills. So it might be like this particular skill requires a harness of 2 and an abjure of 1. So at least if you have at least 2 harness and 1 abjure, you could take that skill, kind of
Mhm.
thing. And that number will get higher as these skills get stronger and more, powerful.
Very cool. So I'm guessing probably a lot of work went into the ship systems, which I didn't dive deeply into, but you guys
Mhm.
wrote a whole set of ship systems for both sailing and combat, as you demonstrated in the stream, chases, all kinds of
Yeah.
fun things.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to do with that you can do with your ship. One really cool thing is that your ship crew is almost a character in itself. So your ship crew has different levels of veterancy, as it were. So you can have a like a green crew and maybe not the best. They kind of can sail a ship, and that's about it. And you can have like an extremely veteran crew. So they would be like maybe a member of the British Navy. This is a Navy cutter that has got a 20-year veterancy. Each member of this crew has, been on the sea their whole lives. And that informs the general sort of ship stats, as it were. So, for example, one of the things you can do on ships is you can board another ship. And to abstract that a little bit and have it not get into the nitty gritty, because we know that players want to do that cool swing onto the other ship with a rope and cut down a couple of goons kind of thing. It's that very Errol Flynn heroic sort of thing.
Mhm.
If a player goes onto another ship, they roll just one attack. And if it's a successful, you measure that against a ship's courage. Sorry, a ship's evasion score. If they
Mhm.
defeat that evasion score, that is a successful attack. And then they roll their damage for that if they need to roll, or it's a set number. And that basically dictates how many of the opposite crew they kill in that one boarding action. So we abstract it rather than making you attack each individual crew member and be there for 3 hours as you slowly work your way through a 50-man ship. You abstract that a bit, so your damage is like we saw that in the stream. Jay's character swung onto the ship and he used his hook to attack and took out 6 dudes.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that was I believe that was a what veterancy? They were one of the lower veterancies, so their evasion score wasn't great, and their crew health wasn't great. So if you have a green quality crew, they have an evasion of 9, which is very easy to beat, and they have 1 HP per person on the ship. So it's so easy to just take out a bunch of them. And then what happens is once you've cut through what would be half of that crew, they have to take a courage test. If that ship fails its courage test, they surrender. Because one of the cool things, historically speaking, is pirates didn't want to fight. Fighting at sea means you're probably gonna die. And they didn't want to sink a ship because they probably wanted to capture the ship, because that ship was probably better than the ship they had. So fighting at sea was last resort, unless you were the French pirate who was just a garbage man who was awful and liked to attack people regardless. But we really wanted to put that in that you don't have to kill and sink everything. So you can, the opposite ships can surrender and you can claim that prize.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I had never thought about it, but it does make a lot of sense. So I guess that seems like we've covered a lot of the mechanical stuff.
Hmm.
One thing I did mention, or not, yeah, one thing I did want to mention. There we go.
Hmm.
I know my words. You know, it's set in a what do you want to say? Fictional alternate.
We like to say historically adjacent.
Okay, which the reasons are explained, but
Uh-huh.
and I think they make a lot of sense. But if you'd like to go into those a little bit,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one really important thing for us at Black Cats Gaming is we literally have like company values. And our company values is that we will not, to the best of our ability, perpetuate any real life harm in our products, in our games. And unfortunately, at the time period where Cursed Captains is set in the golden age of piracy, it was a horrific time if you were a person of color, if you were, someone who's LGBT, if you were a woman, it's not a great time for a lot of people. And we didn't want to hurt marginalized folks through our game because it's quite easy to do even by accident. You can put something in there which is hurtful to someone. And we spent a lot of time discussing this because of the historical period. We wanted to do justice to it, but again, didn't want to perpetuate those things. So we brought on board a sensitivity people that we spoke to. And we decided that there would be no homophobia, sexism, racism in Cursed Captains. And as well, reconciling with the works of Lovecraft, as Lovecraft himself, not the greatest dude in the world when his opinions on marginalized folks. So we were very, very clear that we weren't going to do that. So while we have set our game in this alternate world where these things do not exist, we do have, as you said there, Steve, we have that paragraph at the start of the book, that section about the real life things that happened, the real history of the period and the place. And it actually has resources in there for further reading, for if anybody wants to read more about what happened there and those things. Because it's really important to us to not ignore that happened, because you can't.
yeah, exactly. And I was gonna mention too, like I said, Lovecraft's work is problematic.
Yes.
The games are wonderful, but the actual man's work is not
Yeah.
the nicest things in the world.
No, no. But we're big believers in like reclaiming it,
Yeah.
And I mean, a couple of us at Black Cats are LGBT, you know.
Mhm.
So we're all about trying to make the world a better place, leave it, better than we found it. So we trying to do that through our games.
Very, very cool. And I was going to guess too, the one thing I noticed in the spy game, you had a very, very nice section on safety tools. And
Yes.
given the subject matter in Cursed Captains, and
Hmm.
also that I've noticed one of the people that you've brought in on the team is Kiana Shaw, who
Yep.
I'm familiar with from being one of the compilers, custodians, if you will, of the RPG Safety Toolkit. I'm
Hmm.
guessing that section is going to be at least as good, if not better, as it was in the spy game.
Yeah, absolutely. We are huge, huge believers in the safety tools. We use them in all our games that we stream, and it's very important that we put them in our games that we release ourselves because, as you said, they're very important, and it's vital conversations to have at the table. I mean, I've been friends with Kiana for a long time, and their work on the safety tools is just outstanding. So we wanted to make sure that folks were aware of it and were using it at their tables.
Yeah, I was very impressed by and, like, you'll see them mentioned in a lot of games, but the write-up that
Hmm.
was put in the Spy game, I thought was exceptional, and, like I said, given that and I know you had mentioned this is going for a little bit more of a pulpy tone,
Hmm.
but it also does have, I mean, the mythos and the eldritch, and it is a horror thing.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, I like a lot of horror gaming. Like I mentioned before, Call of Cthulhu was one of the first things I ever played. One of my favorite games currently is a variation on that called Delta Green,
Hmm.
but it is a very different style of play and it requires a lot of buy-in and you have to have the mindset going in that you're
Yeah.
ready for these things. And, if you just walk into a room and someone says, "Hey, do you want to play a pirate game?" Well, sure, pirates are great. I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean a few times, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, you know, deep
Yeah.
ones and shoggoths and whatever else. you're like, "What the" and
Yeah.
so, you know
Absolutely. And I mean, we do have we will be putting tool sets in there to make your game less pulpy and more, horror focused. Like one thing you can do is instead of sanity, for example, here's another thing that we wanted to do is we didn't want to do sanity in Cursed Captains because there is a stigma around mental health still.
Mhm.
And a lot of the language used in sort of Lovecraftian mythosy stuff is, the person was driven insane or they lost their mind because of what they saw. And we didn't want to, again, perpetuate those harms about mental illness. So we went with courage instead. So, you're faced with a Shoggoth and it rocks you to your core, but you're not losing any mental capacity. You're losing your courage, right? It makes you hesitate, makes your hands shake as you see this monster in front of you. It also suits the more pulpy, sort of swashbuckling vibe, but you can regain courage unlike games like Call of Cthulhu. If you lose your sanity, you're on a slippery slope until it's death.
Yeah.
But with Cursed Captains, we wanted you to be able to keep playing and keep that campaign vibe going so you can regain your courage by having like a cup of grog, or there's skills where someone can sit you down and have a nice talk and talk you through what's happening, that kind of thing. But if you wish to do that more horror, things are very dangerous thing, we will be providing tools where you can stop that. There is no courage regain. Health regen is not a thing. If your pirate gets an arm blown off, they get an arm blown off. It's going to be a rough time for them. But going back to the safety tools bit is like we believe these things can be in your game if you want, but it's all about sitting down with your players, managing those expectations, having that open dialogue, find out what they want, what they're into. If there are things in there that say someone is really wigged out by thalassophobia, for example, like myself, hugely thalassophobic. I hate the ocean. I hate deep water. Great game to be working on, by the way, if you're scared of the ocean. So if I was ever a player in a game, I know that my GM, if it was like Sam, for example, would not have my character stuck in the middle of the ocean with no boat because
Mhm.
that would be horrific for me and I would not have a good time. So it's all about communication. And that's the one thing that we really want to hammer home is like, talk to your players, find out what kind of game you want to play. We'll give you the tools for that. It's all there in the book.
Exactly. No, that's yeah, communication and that thing is so, so important, especially when you start branching into some of this stuff that, does touch on more real world things and can, like you said, that can be something that is a real fear for somebody and, they
Yeah.
may not be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the one thing that like we believe games are for fun, right? You should be
Mhm.
having fun at the table. And if you're not having fun, then that's a really sad time and we don't want that to happen.
No, no, exactly.
But having said that, that's not to say that you can't explore some really intense subjects if you don't want to. If you do want to, like some people do like to use role-playing games to explore some stuff. For example, in our Game of Thrones campaign, the ladies of the group, we've really been exploring what it's like to live in a world where your purpose is to be married off and have children. Like as women, that's something we've been playing through and working through, but that's because we had an open dialogue with Sam and talked to him about it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Different people play these games different ways, and I think that's something that sometimes gets lost in some of these talks
Mhm.
is no one's trying to say that your way of playing is necessarily wrong,
Yeah, absolutely.
as long as it's okay with the rest of your table.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the part that gets left off, and a lot of people get all up in arms, and no, we're not saying that any particular way to play is wrong, but you have to make sure that it's okay with the other people you're playing with at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. That's the key thing. That's the key thing. You gotta have all the table on board.
Right, which is why, session zeros and just open communication in general are so important.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why we try to make our games as open for as many play styles as possible. We don't want to say this is exactly how you have to play this game. Otherwise, if it's wrong, throw your book out of the window. You know,
Sam's going to come to your house and take it away.
James is lurking in your front garden. He's watching.
Um, but to circle back a little bit to where you were talking about courage, I also
Yes.
really like the fact that to empower your casting, you spend
Mhm.
courage, which I thought was
Yes.
a beautiful mechanic.
Yeah, I really like that. So I'm not typically someone who plays spellcasters in games. I'm much more of a get in your face and punch 'em kind of gal.
Hmm.
But I love that magic has a cost in Cursed Captains. You know, you have to stare into the abyss to get that power. And sometimes are you gonna lay it all on the line to get the spell off if it saves your crew? Or, like, oh, it's great.
Yeah, and it also, what do you want to say? It makes you hesitant to pull out that big gun right off the bat
Hmm.
because okay, if that doesn't kill it and I have to make some roll involving my courage, now I could
Yeah.
have a problem.
Yeah, well, just like imagine the scene, right? You're on a ship and a kraken appears. I'm not saying there's krakens in Cursed Captains, but it's just the first thing I thought of. Do you spend a bunch of courage for that one big hit and then go, "Oh no, it's not dead"? Uh, and then the kraken comes out of the water and you have to look into its eye and make that test. And if you fail it, then oof, your pirate's going to be no good because they're going to be out of courage.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think that was, an absolutely brilliant move.
It's also, as well, to get into like the mechanics of it, a great way to balance it because in a lot of other systems, magic users run away with the power, right? They
Mhm.
completely outpace melee so quickly. So this is a way to kind of bring everybody back in line so it doesn't feel like anyone is too powerful in the crew.
Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, for a system that is not, what do you wanna say, clearly derived from any other,
Hmm.
I'm really very impressed with the way it works together and the different things it does, which I've read a number of systems over the years, so but the other thing that I wanted to mention for anyone that's hasn't seen any of this, the artwork in this game, and I know you're the art director and you've done some of the art, but the artwork is fabulous. It really is.
Oh,
It's
thank you very
very
much.
evocative, and some of it, like, the cover of the book is just great.
Yeah, so the cover is done by a fantastic artist named Frost Lamazon. You can find them on Twitter, I think that's their main social. Their work is absolutely amazing. I sent them the brief. I was like, I want the ship. They're at battle with like an avatar of Cthulhu. Because if it was actually Cthulhu, he'd be far too big. Because Cthulhu is just that big of a boy. And, I want it to look frantic. I want it to look like maybe it's not going too well for the crew. Maybe the mast is getting ripped up. And I was actually pretty light with what I wanted. I just wanted a general mood, general sort of idea what was going on in the scene. And they absolutely smashed it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that the other image that I really like is the one that's actually kind of like the divider image between the 2 halves of the quick start, I believe it's about page 30,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which just, I mean, there's your scale.
Yeah. Yeah, the huge Cthulhu rising out of the waves and the tiny little ship in the foreground that's on
Yeah.
fire for some reason. Yeah, we love that. That was actually done by a long-term community member of someone who's been around for a long time, and he painted it and just was like, "Oh, hey guys, I painted this thing," and we were like, "Whoa, can we buy it for the game? Because we love this."
Oh, wow, so that wasn't even anything that you guys went looking for, that was someone said, "Hey, I have this."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
he basically was like, "I really love this game. This is a painting I did." And we were like, "Okay. Yeah, we see you. All right."
Well, yeah, even like the little, I don't know what you called them in art director land, but the little filler pieces, like, to cover up, where a column ended or whatever.
Mhm.
Like the little skull with the gem and the octopus tentacle in it on the page right below that.
Yeah.
All that stuff is so evocative and so thematic.
Yeah, I mean, those pieces, those little spot art pieces. There you go. Some insider, some techno language for you there. Those spot arts were done by Lynn Nakasone, who has actually worked with us previously on the Spy Game, and she's worked with us on Dreams, Nightmares, and Half Remembered Meetings, which was my first art directing debut. And it was a little D&D 5e supplement we did full of like monsters and diseases and stuff. But Lynn does absolutely incredible work. If you've seen the Spy Game, she did the piece with the Doctor with the two Uzis,
Ah, okay.
which is our favorite piece. We call it Dr. Uzi, and we use him wherever we can because he's our absolute favorite. Even more favorite than my piece of the Bond villain with the two black cats, who was accidentally Sam, but that's another thing. So yeah, Lynn's done some incredible work, and we really want to get that like journal feel almost with those sketchy pieces. Because the idea of like a pirate keeping a log, that kind of thing, or dearest Elizabeth, I've been at sea for 3 months, that kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And again, absolutely delivered. Just incredible work. But we really wanted it to, we want every piece of this thing to feel thematic, which is why we've gone for like the texture of the page to look like old parchment. We've got the edges, which aren't quite neat, like because they didn't cut paper straight back then. The font itself. Now, Virginia, who did our graphic design, Virginia Page, will want me to mention this. She dug deep, and that font is historically accurate for the time period. The the serif we use in the book was used during the golden age of
Oh,
piracy.
wow.
So there you go.
Wow.
That's how deep we got into this.
That's cool. That's really neat. No, I was gonna say too that like the spy game has a very, very different feel to it. Just like
Hmm.
the even just the color. Like the spy game is very stark and kind of Q's lab. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and
very
this
clean.
yes, and this is very much got that kind of smoky tavern thing going.
Yeah. Well, we also know like the presentation of the book is just as important as the book itself. It'd be hard to sell you a pirate setting if the book was like the spy game, stark white pages with heavy graphic elements, tons of straight, bright colored lines and big cartoony artwork. We didn't feel like that would really help sell the setting as much. So that's why we tried to keep it thematic.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's I mean, we're verging into a whole other conversation, and people that never judge a book by its cover. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's what we all do, especially in the role-playing games.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, you look at a book, "Ooh, what's that? I like the cover."
Yeah. Like, I think it's a pretty open knowledge in the RPG world that the artwork sells a book mostly. If it's on a shelf, the artwork is what sells it to the customer usually, unless it's something they already know, for example. But the big glossy covers with the big fantastic art, or even like Morkborg, the extreme graphics, the very cohesive design, that kind of stuff. It's very important.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, the Morkborg, I think, and not being a graphic designer myself, but I've heard a couple interviews with
Hmm.
I don't remember the individual's name that did that, but he is a graphic designer by trade, but he intentionally broke all the rules while
Hmm.
doing it and yet still made it all work together.
Yeah, they like Mockbug is I mean, I come from an illustrative and a graphic design background. That's what I studied at uni. And that book is it's gorgeous. That's one of those books that I just look at every time I just like open it and just stare at it for a little bit. I've never played it because I never had the chance to play it, but I've looked at it a lot. It's a gorgeous book.
Oh, look, I know the one, and again, I haven't gotten around to getting a physical copy yet,
Hmm.
but I know I've been told, that like the section on health, there's
Hmm.
just a big heart on that
Yep.
spread, and there's like not that many words, but you
Hmm.
just remember that that's the page because the image behind it is so direct.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, wow. Like I said, I'm really excited about this game because I mean, pirates are fun. It's just
Hmm.
let's be honest, and
Yeah.
I've always loved the whole Cthulhu thing, and they mesh so well. And I
Hmm.
think too, like you've mentioned, that there's going to be tools in this game for you to play it different ways tonally. I got the impression that the one shots or the two-part one shot or whatever it was you want to call it that you ran for the YouTube and the streams, amazingly entertaining and fun and funny.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I get the idea that that's perhaps taking it more comedic necessarily than was intended, but still very much within the range of what it's capable of.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I knew with that group, once we all get together, we're all a bunch of chaos monkeys. So I knew it was I knew it was gonna descend into chaos from the moment it went. And we definitely played the much more like rules light version. As said, you can get much more you can get into the nitty-gritty of it. I mean, I let them get away with a bunch of stuff without rolling because we were focusing on it being more entertaining,
Mhm.
at the time. But but yeah, that group. I will say that on Mondays now, Virginia Page, who I mentioned earlier, doing our graphic design, she is currently GMing a group through a more serious Cursed Captains campaign now. So
Mm.
if you want to see something a little bit more that digs into the meat of it, that would be the gameplay to watch.
I might have to check that out. Streams, unfortunately, don't work nearly as well for me as podcasts or YouTube that I can just put on and listen to, but I might have to
Yeah,
look
I
that up.
getcha. We will archive them on our YouTube as we do with all our videos. So
Oh,
there you
excellent,
go.
excellent. Well, yeah, the other thing, and we touched on it real quickly, but this is Black Cats Gaming. Do you want to
Hmm.
talk a little bit about, because I know some people, I was this way when I first got onto Kickstarter. Oh, it's a new company, they don't have anything else out, etc. You want to
Hmm.
talk a little bit about the company, because even though this is only what really the second product the company's put out, you're by no means, industry new people.
Oh no, absolutely. So Sam and James, Sam Webb and James Barry are veterans. Sam is head of product at Modiphius, so has overseen the new Fallout game that's coming out. He's overseen Dune, Act on Cthulhu, Star Trek Adventures. Sam has been all over those products, and James started out as a wargamer, which you can definitely tell a little bit with this system. There's a little bit of war gamery that creeps in that we had to dial back a little bit about distances and stuff. I used to like jab him a little bit about it, but yeah, James also is at Modiphius and is by no means new either. He's worked on a ton of stuff. You think he's worked on Fallout as well. He's wrote for Star Trek. Out of all the three of us, I'm the newbie here, but I come from again illustrative. I have illustrated for Star Trek Adventures. I did a couple of pieces for the Klingon supplement.
Okay.
So I come from that sort of element. I was also an illustrator on the Spy game too. So while we have only released the Spy game and Cursed Captains of Cthulhu on Kickstarter, we are by no means newbies to the industry, and we have many things in mind. We are also looking at doing, as well as our big ticket games like the Spy game and Cursed Captains, releasing smaller things too. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, Dreams, Nightmares, and Half Remembered Meetings, which is on a DM's Guild. It's like I think it's 69-page supplement, intentionally full of, as I said earlier, monsters and diseases and potions and magical items and stuff like that. We're working on a couple like little one-page RPGs too, just for fun, really, in that sort of thing. Because partly the design ethos, the company ethos for Black Cats is we're making stuff that we want to play. We're making stuff that we would want to sit down and play. So this is why, the Spies was all Sam. Sam loves Spies and that sort of genre. Sam and James love that stuff. James with his big pirates thing. So we've got a couple of things in the works. I think that this will be no means the last you hear from Black Cats Gaming. We're not intending to go anywhere.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, like I said, I have the Spy game, and I'm quite impressed by it. Especially, I mean, the physical quality of the product also stands out. So, compliments to whoever that should be passed along to. So I guess then we're getting. Do you have anything more you want to say about Black Cats, Cursed Captains, any of these other things?
Uh, yeah, if anyone's listening and you did back Cursed Captains, we just want to thank everybody for the incredible support. As you've mentioned, this is, technically our second game we've ever released on Kickstarter. But, we got over 150% funding on it, which is incredible. And we're so grateful and so thankful that you're helping us make these games, basically.
Very cool. And if you want to give some links for, be it company website, any of the streams, anything like that, and also if you wouldn't mind dropping me a quick email or something with those in them so I can put them in our show notes,
Yeah,
just so people can
absolutely.
find them that way as well.
Yeah, I'll say the best way to keep in touch with what we're doing is follow us on our social medias. That's at twitter.com/follow Black Cats or at Black Cats Gaming on Facebook. That we keep those regularly updated. We also have a Discord, which Steve is in, so where we talk about stuff all the time. So feel free to hop in and join us. Like we're very eager on having a lot of community. We very much love to hear what people think of the games that they're having, and stuff like that. So yeah, join us.
Yeah. So I guess with that, then it's time to do a little thing. And I told you about this before we recorded, but we
Yeah.
do a little thing at the end of the show we call Game of the Week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
Would you like me to go first? You get a little bit more of a feel for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. So my game of the week this week is a game, and I think we've mentioned it a time or two on the show, but it's never made game of the week. It's called Masks, A New Generation. And this is a It's a superhero game, but it's a little bit of a different take on it. It's from a company called Magpie Games, which, among other things, they also just recently dropped a Kickstarter for a new Avatar game, officially
Ooh.
licensed. But they pretty much most of their games use the Apocalypse World engine or powered by the Apocalypse, so they're very rules light and narrative. But the premise behind Masks is you're playing teen superheroes, specifically, I would say mostly early teens, and so it's very much about really playing like the teen angst and all that
Mm.
kind of stuff with a superhero backdrop. Actually won a silver Ennie in 2017, and it's really neat. Like going through creation, it is a cooperative character building thing where your characters are tied together before you even start play. Comes with 10 playbooks in the base thing, and I know there's a bunch of expansions out for it, but it's a really neat, lightweight little superhero game. Again, that's called Masks: A New Generation.
Very nice.
Yeah. So,
Do you know, I feel like the superhero RPG is not super common, and it feels like it's a no-brainer. And I've seen a couple of my friends play Masks, and they have nothing but positive things to say about it.
yeah, I haven't played it myself. I actually have very limited experience with Supers games, but I've
Hmm.
heard a lot of very, very good things said about Masks.
Hmm.
So, that's mine.
Okay, for mine then, I would be remiss if I didn't do this, considering we've been playing a 2-year-long campaign on the Black Cats Gaming Twitch channel. But my game of the week is Sword Chronicle by Green Ronin Games. Sword Chronicle is their fantasy feudal role playing. They did have a Song of Ice and Fire, but unfortunately, I believe they lost the license because of weird licensing issues. Sword Chronicle was released, and it's a fantastic game for really like it suits Game of Thrones so well because there are the social intrigue system is beyond anything I've ever played before. The way it helps facilitate and sort of arbitrate social encounters, because sometimes in other games, you basically go, oh, I'm gonna convince the shopkeeper to give me a discount. I roll one thing and it works. That is not how it works in Sword Chronicle. It's almost like combat, but social, and you've got different things you can do. You can nitpick on their last nerve to incite them to do something, or you can convince them, or you can threaten them, or in the words of Jonathan Fry, move to combat. It's the strongest thing you can do. But it also facilitates fantastically the combat of a sort of feudal fantasy game. It abstracts things. So building a house, like a noble house, is one of my favorite things to do. And I make houses just for fun if I never play them. Because
Very
they
cool.
tell you so much about this house, about its people, about its lands, about the family that owns it. So if you really do dig that sort of social intrigue, noble Game of Thronesy kind of thing, then Soul Chronicle is the game for you.
Yeah, well, that's essentially my understanding is it is the game that was Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Like you said, the licensing, whatever, and they just stripped all the IP out of it and went, here's the engine.
Yeah, they updated a couple of things. And I think they made a couple of tweaks to the sort of mass combat, so the sieging and like warfare stuff. But yeah,
Hmm.
it is as you said.
Well, that's really cool. I'm gonna have to add that to my list of things to look at, as if it isn't already massively long. But
Yeah.
it's the curse of this thing, this podcast thing. Someone should have warned me when I started doing this. It's a trap. You find all kinds of more things you want to read and play and less time to do them. It's
Well, let me
wonderful.
tell you, if you're making RPGs, you have no time to read them. It doesn't.
It only gets worse.
Yep, they just pile up. They just keep piling up.
That's you know what, I have to say this, and with all of you that work on this stuff professionally, but people like Sam and James who
Hmm.
do it both professionally and as their side thing, the
Yeah,
passion just has to be there, and I think that comes through in this work. It
yeah,
really does, because they clearly love it.
yeah,
And I think that's something that makes the RPG industry very different from pretty much everything else. And like you mentioned, you all are making the games that you want to play. And I think those are the type of things that make this a special industry and make RPG games so special just in general.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. At the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of nerds that want to roll dice and tell stories together.
Mhm. Well, unless you have anything more to say, I would like to thank you very much for taking the time to come join us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Remind people, go check out, Cursed Captains, go check out the other stuff from Black Cats. Like Susie said, they're going to be opening it up for late pledges. You said probably sometime in August.
Yeah, probably towards late August. We want to get a couple of things in place first, but yeah, it would definitely be August time.
Yeah, because I know, like, I backed it. I didn't back it at the level I would like to because of various things going on in real life. So I'm probably going to go in and add a bunch of things or change, anyway. But well, I'm only waiting on, like, I think this makes 6 different games from Kickstarters at the moment.
Oh, dang.
All but one of them, well, technically 2 of them are only settings. But anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to come talk with us and tell us about this wonderful game.
Oh, thank you very much.
And any last words before we sign out for the episode?
Thank you all again so much for your wonderful support. Please do check out our other games, and if you do enjoy them, please let us know. We do love to hear when people have campaigns or games or play our games. It helps keep us going.
And by the way, I know Susie did mention the Black Cats Discord. I can verify from firsthand experience, you can find her there constantly.
Yeah, crying about my characters.
It's quite an active Discord too. It's a fun little place to hang out.
We're a good bunch. We have a good time.
But in any case, I guess with that's it for this week. So we'd like to remind you to be kind to each other and go play some RPGs.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.